Hi, today we're going to talk about understanding what your children, if they've been adopted, have come from in a sense of being in care. And I'm sure there'll be lots of similarities across the countries. So I've got two adopted boys who have obviously been in care, been in foster care, and I've also been a foster carer. So I just want to talk to you about understanding what your children have come from. So obviously your children have been in a birth family, and then for whatever reason they've left that birth family or been removed and they spent some time in foster care. The foster care system is a system and it's something that is quite difficult to understand, and from the point of view of a child would be even more difficult to understand. As a foster carer, it was a very difficult system to work within because there is a huge amount of paperwork, red tape, things that have to be done and things that have to be ticked off as you're going along. Now, as a foster carer, what we noticed is that children have generally quite a lot of changes. So it's really hard to describe why that is. When you look at it, you can't really work out why it is. I think often there aren't enough foster carers, and often foster carers will be suitable for a certain type of child and not another. So foster carers are generally older, they generally like younger children, and when children have been in care for a while they tend to move on to different foster carers. So from the point of view of your child, they're likely to have had more than one foster carer. If you end up adopting a child that's been with a foster carer from early to you having them, that is fantastic. That is the best you could possibly hope for, but I would say that's quite rare. Children don't understand that they're in foster care, so they've started with their birth family and they've ended up with another family as far as they're concerned. Now, they may find themselves in a family with other foster children. They won't understand their foster children really. They'll just see that they're other children, and that foster carer may have birth children as well, and that's even more confusing. And if you're lucky in a way, your child that you will be getting will start bonding with the foster carer, but they will also bond with the other foster children, and they will bond with the birth children. Now, what can happen, of course, is other foster children move on to adoption before they do, and they might even have a sibling that moves on before they do, and so you've got it, they experience more loss and trauma as a result of that. And also they may get very attached to the birth children, and of course when they come to you they're going to lose them. So they may have lost siblings from the birth family, and they may lose siblings from the foster care situation as well. So you can see how this trauma is building up, but more importantly than anything is how a foster child can think that children and people just disappear. And that's what our boys' experience is that people just disappear. I mean, they disappeared off to an adoptive family and came back to us. Confusion. They were without foster children in the home, and when they came back to us, foster children were there, and then they were there and those foster children went off to adoption and they went off to separate homes. Really confusing. And then my birth children, who are adults or teenagers, gradually left home one by one. It's all loss, it's all trauma, it's all something for them to process. So before they come to you, they may have all of this stuff to process, and so it's really important just to be open with them, and wherever you can, as I've already explained in another video about keeping in touch with foster carers, try to keep in touch with people that belong to their history, whoever they are. Now in the end that might end up being the birth family if you have a more open adoption, but it might not. And so if you are not keeping in touch with the birth family, then you definitely need to try and keep in touch with the foster family. When children come into care, there's different ways they can come in, and I'm not going to get all this correct, and I just think it's more the principle of it. So our boys came in on an emergency care order, which meant that something significant happened and they need to be removed by the police. So it was a big incident. That's how they came in. Not every child will come in that way, but they will come in normally then under an interim care order, where social workers will be busily proving and getting evidence together that that's what needs to happen. And that's the weird thing about the social care system. Social workers spend a lot of time doing paperwork, going to court, to prove the actions they've taken. There's a lot of proving to do. Children don't just come into care because it seems like the best thing to do. They come into care because there's significant evidence of significant harm. Not just harm, significant harm. So social workers are busy beavering away, filling out loads of paperwork and going to court. So a social worker will have skills with dealing with children, dealing with foster carers, but they'll also have court skills, or they'll need court skills. My daughter's a social worker, so I can call on that experience a little bit, and I hope to get her to do a video soon. They're being on an interim care order. If during that time it does not look like the parents can, or the parent can, do what they need to make improvements so that the child can go back to them. So say, for example, there's a partner that's dangerous around, or there's been neglect and improvements not been made, there'll be meetings with the birth family, and the foster care will be part of that. There'll be a plan laid out, and the parent will need to prove that they can get themselves back on track, so they're given time. And then if that's not met, a full care order will be granted. I think this is right. Forgive me if it's not, if you're a social worker watching. A full care order will be granted, which is a more kind of permanent thing. And during that time, more evidence will be gathered, and parents will still be given a chance to get things going and to make improvements. So if they have a drug habit, they could, start putting themselves together and put things right. If that doesn't happen, it will go to court to decide if the child needs to be adopted. And during all this time, parents can make improvements, and when it goes to court, they can contest and they can still put their story forward. So it's a long process, and this is one of the issues around adoption, and this is why some people go for foster to adopt, and this is why it was designed, because there's a certain pattern that has to happen to get children released for adoption, and it takes time, and there's really no way around that. So the way around that is for the potential adopter to be the foster carer, and then whilst all this is happening, they have that child, and so there's a chance that they can then adopt the same child. That's why it was designed. It goes on and on and on, and there's twists and turns all around. So when you're a foster carer, especially if you feel very passionately about that child not going back to that home because it's a very abusive situation, you're on tenterhooks. You're waiting for the social worker to call you. They'll tell you what's happening. They'll tell you what's happened at court, and they'll tell you what you need to do next. Also, as a foster carer, generally speaking, unless it's really, really, really high level, you'll have to go and take that child to contact. And that will be even if you know that child is being sexually abused by that person. You will have to take that child to contact, no matter what that family has done to that child. This is where you get this crossover path where, if you think about it, a child will always love their birth family, however abusive, will love and have loyalty to that parent. Even if they're scared witless of them, they still have that kind of love connection that you have when you're born into a family. You've got this weird kind of situation where the child has been taken along to contact. They might be scared of that parent, but they still want to see that parent, but they don't. And then the foster carer has to fall out afterward of what will happen. And we used to find that the boys would just be all over the place, totally all over the place, and it would take a couple of days to calm down. This is what they've gone through. They've gone through those contacts once, twice, 3 times a week. They've gone through the sense of loss that they're losing their birth family, a sense of fear around maybe being around that family that's hurt them. Huge emotions, that's what they've gone through. Also, during that time, I think, because we had the boys about 2.5 years, they went off for adoption and came back, but about 2.5 years. In that time, we had 6 social workers. 6 social workers. So we had to explain their story to the social worker from the beginning. Sometimes social workers were given, about 24 hours before a major meeting in court because they were new and they had to quickly catch up on everything. So they would come to us as foster carers and say, quickly tell me everything you know. In that time, there'll be a guardian, a children's guardian, that will be there for them and be thinking about in the background independently, what do they think is best for that child. That guardian will come to the foster carer and ask them loads of questions. So it's a complicated system. And I think the reason why I'm doing this video is because adopters will come in on the end of that. And even adopters have a lot of meetings. So they'll come in on the end of that when the child is already hopefully quite settled into something of a routine. And a lot of this has passed, a lot of this has happened. So the adopter comes in on the end of all this going on. And I just think it's important for you to know that that's what your child's been through and that's what the system looks like. It might be a bit different where you are, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of similarities to what I'm saying. So if you found that helpful, then please stick around, look on my channel. I've got playlists on adoption and parenting, therapeutic parenting, bonding and attachment, processes, questions adopters ask. Check out my channel and I'll see you on my next video. Thank you.